Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the webinar. And we've got a fabulous panel for you this morning or this afternoon, wherever you are. And basically, we're going to be talking about effective sales and marketing techniques as we exit lockdown. But before we do that, let's just go through a couple of brief housekeeping things. So this is very much your webinar. We have a great panel with some awesome insights into key sales and marketing issues, but we're looking for your questions. So there are two ways you can ask questions. You can ask questions live via the microphone. If you look at the control panel on the right-hand side, if you want to ask a question live, just click on the hand. That will notify us that you want to ask a question. We can then unmute you and you can ask the question live. Alternately, use the question module. Simply type your question into the module and I will then pick up on that question and ask the question of our panelists. So without further ado, let me introduce you to our panelists. And our first panelist is Eric Buck, and he's the VP of Global Commercial and Distribution Sales with Hitachi. He's been with Hitachi for a year, focused on optimizing their digital transformation strategy through CSPs, as well as leveraging the value-added capabilities of distribution. He's a channel chief and has been at this business for over 20 years. Clearly, he started when he was 13 years old. He has also held roles from leadership at distribution to VAR to vendor. So he has a complete perspective of the whole industry. And Eric's number one driver this year is to crack the nut for Hitachi Vantara in the mid-market by leveraging partners who are managing through the journey to managed services. With most companies seeing 40% of their revenue being attributed to managed services and margins up to 25%, these partners are well suited for Hitachi's Vantara's solutions. Eric has many hobbies, but recently took in a retro restoration. He acquired a 1966 International Harvester Scout. For those of you who don't know, it's a bit like an old Bronco, but rarer these days. So Eric, tell us a little bit about Hitachi.
Yeah, sure, Rod. Thanks a lot. And everybody, thank you for spending part of your afternoon with us. Hopefully we will add some value to your day and to your work. You know, Hitachi has a lot of great technologies in the marketplace. We're a 110-year-old company. We own 89 different businesses, many of which touch you in your daily lives and range across the board. I'm in the Hitachi Vantara business, which is a combination of our digital capabilities, our storage capabilities. And as Rod said, you know, a major focus for us is taking this enterprise technology that we've done so well with and making it more available in an as-a-service environment for mid-market partners such as yourself. We really believe that partnering with you in the mid-market, the value you bring to your clients and the technology we bring to the table can make a huge difference.
Excellent. And our next speaker is Michael De Palma, and he's the Senior Channel Development Manager with Datto. He's been with Datto for 5 years, the last 4 as a member of the Channel Development team. Prior to Datto, he worked in sales and business development in several industries, including insurance, banking, and construction. He frequently delivers sales trainings both internally at Datto and for partners across the world, so great person to ask those sales questions of. In 2019, he gave over 100 presentations in the US, Canada, and Europe, so he's loving lockdown, all those travel miles no longer being part of his schedule. And he's presented alongside industry leaders, members of the FBI, Secret Service, and the Department of Homeland Security. So Michael, tell us a little bit about Datto.
Yeah, so Datto is a channel-only technology company, and I say it broadly because we started out as a business continuity solution. That's where we're kind of synonymous with that back in 2007. So now we're in our 13th year. Over the last several years, we have added SaaS protection, so backing up O365, G Suite. Obviously, that's been pretty important at this point. Also, a networking line. and business management, so PSA and RMM, and everything that we have, including networking, is based on an MRR model, which is a little bit unique. But being a channel-only company for as long as we have been, and everything has moved to as a service, we felt that networking is moving down that path as well. As Rod said, normally I'm out on the road 3-4 days a week, so I'm loving quarantine right now. I've shifted basically all my presentations to these virtual events, 3 of these today. So that's really what I've been spending my time. But yeah, looking forward to this. Should be great.
Excellent. And our third panelist is Scott Anderson. And Scott is Chief Marketing Officer for Intermedia. He's responsible for Intermedia's global marketing, including product, brand, direct channel demand, and digital marketing. He joined Intermedia in the fall of 2018. He's had 25 years in business-to-business tech marketing. He's made a career of building technology brands, accelerating business demand, driving go-to-market strategies, and increasing customer loyalty for companies that have ranged from startup to Fortune 500 enterprises. Scott has served in marketing leadership roles at Hewlett-Packard, Sun Microsystems, Sitecore, Bazaarvoice, Weyerhaeuser, and CNN International. And he was named as the top digital marketer by B2B Magazine, now Ad Age, 2 years running, and was listed as the top 100 North American business-to-business marketer by Hot Topics. Scott's also a rock drummer and was part of the crew touring with Paul McCartney for 2 years, and was actually responsible for creating McCartney's digital library. So Scott, tell us a little bit about Intermedia.
Thanks, Rod. Hey, welcome everybody for being here. Intermedia is a unified communications as a service and contact center as a service company, as well as offering a number of additional cloud-based services such as hosted email, secure file backup, archiving, etc. We're a partner-first organization, and MSPs are our pals. We have both a branded solution and a private label solution. So if you want to work with us, you can sell under your brand, and you own the customer, and we support you. I've been doing digital marketing for a long time, and I guess digital marketing has become a lot more relevant, as that's the way we engage with our customers these days, through videos, emails, chats, everything else. So it's highly relevant these days. Delighted to be here.
Excellent. Well, welcome everyone. And before we start, thought we'd do some level setting. So wonder if we can start with a couple of polls. So if we can start with question 1, and then we'll move on to what we have labeled as question 3. Apologies for that. So if everyone could chip in, what effect has the COVID-19 crisis had on your revenue forecast for July 2020? And basically, if everyone could chip in their answers now. And we've got about half the people on the call have voted so far. Let's get the other half in. We're up to almost 70% of people on the call have chipped in their answers. Keep those answers coming through. I'll keep it open for another few seconds to let those last folk pop in their answers. Okay, excellent. Caleb, if you could throw up the answers. So for 16% of us, it's business as usual. Another 16% forecasting for July, it's going to be up between 0 and 15%. We have a lucky 4% on the call where their forecast for July is up 15% plus, and 40% of us are forecasting a 0 to 15% downturn in July from the original forecast at the beginning of the year, and 24% of us feel the forecast is going to be 15% plus down. So perhaps if I could start with Eric. Eric, any thoughts on the poll?
No, this feels about right. We're classically been enterprise storage driven, so our sales cycle is a little longer. We expected to see some softness. This is the end of our Q1, our Q2 starting next month, and what we've seen actually based on adjusting our pro rates is that we're getting more comfortable with our performance against our expectations and our goals, but we do have growth goals for this year. We haven't gone to a market where, but we've pushed some of those. We haven't made it a year over year on the quarter expectation because of the fact that we know certain projects have gotten pushed a little. But in APAC and EMEA, the business has been holding up pretty good, and the Americas is doing okay. We've still got some really great opportunities. So it's interesting because we're not necessarily feeling that as heavily as we thought. And in Q4, we saw some projects pulled in, which ended for us in April. So we've seen, obviously in our space anyway, we've seen a bit of an investment in people trying to get projects done.
Okay. Michael, any thoughts?
Yeah, it was interesting. We moved our forecast down, not really understanding, not really knowing what was going to happen starting back in March. And we've actually started to exceed those updated forecasts. And now July is kind of back in line where we thought it was going to be. And what's interesting about that is, we're channel only, so we don't sell direct. So it shows you kind of that the channel was able to rebound relatively quickly. So I think we're, hopefully that's, what we're seeing in terms of the local MSPs and the individual MSPs. But for us, the channel has really put us back on track, which I, find pretty interesting.
Okay. And Scott, any final thoughts on this one?
Yeah, also not surprising, as audiences shelter in place and they're not out and about buying as much, and particularly as we've seen in small and medium businesses, sometimes there's a wait and see attitude to buy further infrastructure or services. We're seeing that a bit in our business, interestingly, because we're a unified communications as a service company. Business has been up. It turns out we're ideal for remote solutions, and so we've been quite busy helping businesses replumb their operations, their communications across the board.
Okay, fabulous. So we'll go with one more poll, and Caleb, if you could throw up what we've got listed as question 3. As we begin to move out of lockdown, what do you need most from your vendors? And just tick anything that applies. Which are the ones that are most important to you, but don't necessarily restrict it to a single answer? If everyone could vote now, that would be brilliant. Okay. As I said, check as many as apply to you. Okay, we've got almost 70% of people voted at the moment. So last few people, we'll keep it open for another 10 seconds. Let the last few vote. Get those final few votes in. And Caleb, if you'd like to share the results. So fascinating. The 1 and 2 results are market sector insights to help me target potential customers. And help and advice on remote marketing and sales initiatives, which I guess is why a lot of you are on the call. So Scott, perhaps if I can start with you on this one.
Well, so it's interesting because that's right where we went in mid-March, and my marketing team worked around the clock for about 3 weeks to refocus from, hey, we're the business phone provider, to how do you do remote working? And I think the key from my perspective in marketing and sales today is helping customers. They have a different set of needs. Some of them are just figuring out how to keep, in business as their employees go remote, and they have a different relationship with suppliers and partners, and you're not able to engage with your customers in person. As we mentioned, people aren't jumping on planes right now. Everybody's working at home. So we pivoted very quickly to providing advice. How do you work remote? How do you manage remote employees? How do you run a video conference like this one? How do you look good on video? All of those types of things. So my advice, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, is as things have shifted and your customers need help because the world is vastly different from them, to the extent that you can provide that help, there's a huge loyalty opportunity here to help customers through a tough time.
Excellent. And Michael, do you want to come in on this one?
Yeah, I mean, the two that are at the top would be exactly what I would say we're seeing, and me personally in my role. I mean, I'm doing 3 to 4 end user focused webinars on behalf of partners right now. And you just said, some of them are just strictly on things like how do you manage a remote workforce? So not even touting your products or anything like that, but getting people on and doing education and then figuring out how to get that audience that now has come and listened to you and turn those into sales. And that's actually the exact topic, the one I have this afternoon, is going to be how to manage a remote workforce. So a lot of it has been brainstorming with these partners, and me even learning a lot from them and what they're doing. It's been interesting, but there's it has shifted in terms of the approach, and I think that's right in line with what we see here, because that's what our partners have been asking for as well.
Excellent. And Eric.
Yeah, of course. I think the guys are hitting the nail on the head. It's great, by the way, to see that the audience is focused here. This is a place that even on our last call that we were seeing a big push for, and our enablement team has been doing things like developing better configuration tools that are vertically driven, so that when you're having a conversation in a certain vertical, you can take that, apply it to the offering, and be able to come back with something that's very specific for them by answering questions about that vertical. So then you've got not only the technology you need, but the conversation you want to have with that particular client. So I think the guys are spot on. Selling's obviously a little different, but I also think what you find is that we have a lot of evidence that we've been trying to do this for a long time, and it took an event like this to kind of push everybody over the top, where we've partially invested in good configuration or online calling and webinars and things. And now you've got everybody paying attention and fully adopting these as the methods. And so I just think there's a lot of capability already out there for us to leverage as well.
Fabulous. Okay, so let's move on to straight Q&A. And I've got some interesting questions already coming in. So keep those questions coming through. As a reminder, you can either virtually hold up your hand, or you can ask questions through the question box. And our first question, which I think is really interesting, is from one of the audience. Now is not the time for a hard sell. How do you position that soft sell to the customer? And Scott, you're nodding frantically there, so maybe I can start with you on this one.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. So when the virus hit and we all went home, first of all of us, as all the other panelists and probably everybody on this phone call had to do, is we had to figure out how to work in a remote work environment, right? So we're all home and we're reconfiguring ourselves, and so our partners and our customers are having to do that as well. As it turns out, with a lot of businesses that have worked in the office and now everybody's working remotely, it was a challenge for people to figure out the operations of their company, how to communicate with each other, again, how to communicate with customers and suppliers, and then how to engage with new prospects, how to support customers, doing all of that remotely. There's not a mood right now, and there hasn't been for the last several months, for hard sells. And I get all these emails that come in every day, and a lot of them are worded wrong, or the other extreme is they're worded too much as phony. I hope you're safe, all this other stuff. It's about helping people. And so when we went to this remote work environment, businesses are trying to stay afloat. It's about keeping businesses sustained in this uncertain world. And I told my team, our job is to help people, hands down. That's what we're doing. And so again, we created all these blogs and these materials about how to do basic remote work topics. And it wasn't about pitching, it wasn't about selling, it was, we just want to help people. We know how to do it, we have the tools, we want to help people. And I think that is the order of the day. Hard selling, there's no mood for it.
Michael, do you want to come in on this one?
Yeah, it's interesting. I do a lot of the sales trainings internally at Datto, and I had to train a bunch of new SDRs, which are the cold callers, on March 30th, something like that. So now they're 2 weeks in, they're brand new to a company, and they're the cold callers. The hardest training session I ever gave, because what do you tell? I mean, they're going to have a really hard uphill battle. And so you're exactly right. I mean, I think that you saw, like Scott said, the people people can see through the phoniness of, hey, I really want to help, but here's all these cool things. So you really do have to, we all had to be in that spot where we were trying to maintain our existing clients, right? That was number one. I'll push back in that I think we are starting to get out of that a little bit. And I think what we have now is we have a bunch of data over the last few months that showed what the channel is able to do for small businesses. And now you could start to pivot that and say, hey, you were trying to handle this on your own. Do you remember how rough the last 3 or 4 months are? Here's what I did for my clients. And so you're educating, but you're also pushing towards the sale for the prospect. So I think that there's a way that we're starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel. It's not where we were March and April. We're getting closer to sales guys being able to sell.
Yeah, I think if I were to add to that, you know, what we're seeing, Rod, is similar to what the guy said. The fastest way to our customers isn't through the hard sell. It's through people that know them, if it's not us already. And so the partners have a fantastic relationship that's ongoing, and they're having more and more conversations we've seen than maybe ever before, because it's acceptable to just jump on a video call or a phone call to talk about your needs. You don't have to try and get in the office to see somebody. And that right there just takes the bar down, and you talk about the challenges they're having, what they're dealing with. And so we're spending a lot of time investing in, you know, account mapping exercises, demand generation activities that drive through partners that have existing relationships with those end customers, and maybe helping them expand their base of local customers through some of that effort as well. But the primary success is going to come from existing relationships.
Okay, let me drill down into that for a second, Eric. Account mapping. Explain what you mean there for the folks
Yeah,
on the call
so
that
there's a let's say there's a number of partners that we know through our distributors that do business in certain parts of the country with a certain clientele that we're targeting. Now, typically we might have had our inside sales guys try to go talk to those end users directly and try to warm that lead up, and that can still work. I think to Michael's point, there is an adoption there that's happening. But when we work with our distributors and find out that these partners, hey, here's a list of end users that we know that we're trying to get into, and they say, yep, here's some partners that are interested in working with you on that list, and they've done business at those end users previously. Now we've mapped up the accounts that are our targets or their targets with that cross coverage, and then we can collectively use a relationship we have, a relationship they have, to try and advance that sale.
Okay. And I've got another question coming in that feeds off something said earlier. We've helped customers move to home working. What's next? Who wants
take
to
that
jump
one?
in on that? Go for it.
I'll give it the first start. I think nobody knows what's next. I think that the idea here is we kind of have this work from anywhere mentality, because it's going to vary industry to industry, region to region. There's going to be some sort of blend. There was a study that they did a couple weeks ago that said that 74% of businesses assumed that through 2020, they're going to have at least a portion of their workforce working remotely. Again, so the stress here is agility, being able to be agile and saying, okay, I was able to get my folks working from home. Now there's going to be some sort of blend. The services I offer, this is why you outsource it to me, the MSP, because I'm able to make sure that you're agile. And wherever you are, I'm going to protect your devices. I'm going to monitor your devices. I'm going to do all of those same things that I did for you when you were sitting in a queue back in January.
I wholeheartedly agree. We can't make the assumption that it's all over and everything's going back to normal. You know, probably like the rest of you, we take a look at within our state and within our area, how many cases of coronavirus are going around. We could all go back in the office, and then we could all be pulled back. So we call it elastic communication. So the ability to bend your communications to any employee, any customer, any supplier without breaking it from any location. That's how it's going to be. We assume we're going back, but there's an uncertain world, and we're going to have to be able to have our organization set up to operate from anywhere at any time. That's the foreseeable future.
And this is the time that IT shows up, right? We're, you know, like I said earlier, we've hit this event where now we've forced this tipping point of adoption and use, and everybody's accustomed to it now. So it's kind of like back in the day when we were all doing disaster recovery efforts and trying to make sure we had plans and backups and all these things. We're in that model now where it's, okay, do I have my edge taken care of? Is my security in the right place? We're seeing a huge adoption from a cloud as a service model perspective, SaaS models, you know. So I think that we'll continue to see that tipping point occur, and IT is really good at adapting, and I would expect that we'll see a continuation of that as well. We won't go
Okay.
back, that's for sure. Even if we do go back heavily to the office, we won't go back from this investment. There's no doubt. Yeah.
Okay. And we got a bunch of questions coming in. I've got some marketing questions I'm going to pick up on in a moment, but I've got an interesting sales question before we move on to some of the marketing questions that are coming in. And the question is, I have 4 salespeople. Previously, we all worked from the office together. I'm now managing those salespeople remotely. Have you got any tips on the things I should be doing to increase and enhance their performance?
Yeah, I mean, I could jump in here. I've been managing global sales teams for a decade, and I can tell you that remote management is so much different than being in the office, and it takes the time for them. Yeah, I think first off, you have to remember, as a leader, you always have this power that your employees see, that authority, and they're at home worrying and anxious about how well they're performing. Do they have the right tools to perform? How do you view their, how does the company view their value, since they're so used to going to an office and having camaraderie? So I think the first thing I'd say is you got to make sure you build that culture, that team connectedness remotely. You got to find ways to spend more time with them. Even if it used to be easy for them to stop by and say hi, and that was enough for them back then, now it's not. They don't see you. They don't know you're there. They don't know what you think. You've got to reach out. You've got to spend time with them. I think second, jump into the business with them. I would get involved if they're doing calls, do calls with them, because they're going to see you build their confidence. They're going to see you reinforce their points. It's going to make them feel better about where they're at and what they're doing, and that you're still there even though you're not physically there. I'll give it to Michael and Scott on that note.
Yeah, I agree. I think, and it's just going to sound a little like touchy-feely, but I think you really got to dig down and understand how they're handling working from home, and how, what's going on with them. I mean, so I've got 2 kids, 6 and 8. Obviously, people are going to know that I'm homeschooling and I'm doing all those things. So you say, okay, if somebody's got kids, this is tough. But why would it be tough for a single 26-year-old who's living by himself? Well, if he's living in Manhattan and he's been stuck in his apartment with no human contact for the last 2 months, yeah, that's going to start wearing on you. So to Eric's point, you need almost more one-on-ones, more interaction, and understand why, for the underperforming person, why they're not performing. Maybe they're just not good at working remote, and if that's the case, you might have to part ways. But if it's because there's other things going on, or maybe they just don't know how, it's not the lack of effort, it's the lack of not understanding how to plan out your day when you're working from your kitchen. That's where you jump in, you do more of those one-on-one things. And yes, it's more work and a little bit different that maybe a sales manager's used to, but we've all kind of pivoted our roles, and I think that Eric hit it on the head with that.
I believe what the guy said wholeheartedly, and we have people with small kids, and every time you talk to them, you hear something screaming in the background, and I'm not sure if that's better than the guy who's alone in Manhattan. I don't know, but I guess my point is the human touch is really important. So we're talking to you from videos. We have video conferences so that we can look each other in the eye, and the guy who's in Manhattan alone in his apartment, he needs to see you. He needs to see your facial inflections. He needs to hear your voice. So for me, it's calling around and making sure that I'm talking to employees frequently. We now have stand-up calls on Monday. I call it the jumpstart calls, and I've never had them before. And so the whole team can get on and see the leaders and talking through what's going to happen this week. And then with one-to-ones, they're always video based. So so the extra care and making that communication virtually is important. It used to just happen in the office. Now you have to plan for it and make sure that you're doing it.
Okay. And now I'll step into some of the marketing questions if I can. And the first one is, I have very limited marketing resources. What should I be focused on at the moment? And there's a lovely broad question for you, Scott.
Hey, that's a great one. I would say it depends. So if you're working with a broad customer base and you have cross-sell, upsell opportunities, we've found webinars are super successful. So we're doing a lot of webinars, and we've seen 2x the attendance. But our webinars are about how to do remote working and how to use our video conferencing tools and our desktop apps and our web apps. So it's very utility focused webinars. From an outbound, from a recruiting perspective, emails are still relevant. And the other thing that we're testing, because I used to go to all the industry events, And guess what? That whole thing shut down. So we're going to, we're also testing virtual industry events. So there's a lot of companies that are putting them on. We went to one recently about a month ago and saw a 7 times increase in leads. This was an MSP recruiting event, and we had tons of MSPs coming into our virtual expo. And so now we're processing and having discussions there. So I think it's just a matter of whatever your objective is, figuring out how to achieve that objective without being in front of a person in real time, getting on an airplane and showing up in their office.
And Eric, maybe I can bring you in on that one.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, you know, for us, our partners having in the as a service space, having a lot of as a service conversations. So they're used to landing and expanding. So a lot of their conversations continue, you know, flowing into the change in needs and whatnot. I do think the virtual events is a good one. Our webinars, I believe, have gotten much better. You know, naturally, when that's your only vehicle, everybody's coming to it, and you can invest a lot more into it. We've seen our executives, you know, all have green screens in their houses, you know, now, and so you can create different backgrounds and capabilities so that your folks can make it feel more cohesive and that there's theme-oriented type efforts going on. And I think we're going to continue to see that get better. I think you always have things like, you know, yesterday we were in an event. There was a CIO conference, you know, and a lot of the CIOs through different industries talking about what's going on. I think you'll continue to see that as a way to move technology, you know, through those types of venues where they're talking about their problems and there's technology leaders involved and explaining where we're headed and what we're doing. So I think electronically and digitally, we're going to get a lot of information, and that's going to become even more apparent from a marketing perspective. You know, and of course we've evolved right over the years from kind of features and benefits to more solutions based and now fairly insight driven. And so I think a lot of us are trying to make sure that we're giving real world situations that include that insight that drive the need for change. And since we've been practicing that, I think this is just another tipping point where that'll crystallize much better, and the conversations through those digitally will get stronger.
Michael.
Yeah, so I run our Marketing Development Fund program, our MDF program at Datto, and so we've got some detailed analytics on every dollar that we've spent given to partners for different things. And we, you know, I look at breakfast versus lunches and all these things, and I had all this data, which is great. And then the world changed, and I've got to start over and figure out what the new data is. The event, we might be talking about the same event, Scott. We attended a virtual industry event that we do every year, and it's a big event, and usually we come back and we get 400 leads, 500 leads. We had 1,800 leads. Those are people that came and downloaded something from our booth. So the leads exploded, which is interesting. So now you start to wonder, is this going to be the trend of the future? You start to think of these folks that organize these events. I mean, Datto, we do a DattoCon. We're looking at all different options. Is this the way of the future? So go and look at some of those industry events, and then go hound your vendors to give you some MDF money to help offset that cost. Same thing with webinars. I keep hearing from partners, there's webinar fatigue, there's webinar fatigue. We don't see that in our numbers. We're still seeing good turnout, and we're seeing more requests for recordings. So even if you don't get it, you can put it into a newsletter. You could do things like this, and those don't cost a lot of money. They're just time. So again, I encourage you to just reach out to all your vendors, not just Datto, but whoever they're trying to help you. They have resources. Leverage all of those things, because that's inexpensive, you know.
I think something the guy said as well about the digital events is important. I think number one, the event doesn't necessarily end when it was scheduled to end. And I think people now realize that they can record the content, make it available, and that you can do your one-on-ones outside of the event if it didn't work for folks. You know, whereas typically when we fly somewhere, we end up having all of our meetings and everything right in that one space. And we're all exhausted when we leave, and we hope to remember everything that we took from our meetings and we execute on it. Whereby when you have a digital event, you know I just did one recently, and the one-on-ones couldn't happen exactly when they normally would have, so they have to happen a week later, and it's like, big deal, right? Like, I mean, this is still connected. It's not like I'm fenced in because we're not meeting at the Hilton or the Marriott or what have you. We just get on a digital call, a video call, and do our thing, right?
That happened to me actually this week. I got an email saying, "Hey, I loved your presentation. Can you share the slide deck?" I had no idea what he was talking about, because he had seen the recording from like a week before. So I had to say, "Hey, I don't know what you're talking about, sir, but I got him the deck."
So I've got another interesting question here. Maybe you can each answer it from your company's perspective, and that is helping to fund digital events is great. What other help and advice do you give your channel partners? And I guess what they're driving at is what will you do to help someone on this call run a more effective digital event?
Well, we actually offer up speakers. So we have a whole bunch of topics. We're great at remote work. We've got the remote work tools. We have a number of events, and we go out and speak, and we speak on behalf of our partners. So that's there as well. The other thing that we worked on feverishly when we went into to the shelter-at-home era is, as we created our own, we had to recreate all of our own campaigns for all of our products across all of our channels, right? Because all of a sudden the buying triggers and what customers and prospects were interested in were changed. We bundled all those up and made them into campaigns in a box. And so we have several campaigns in a box that are available on our partner portal for all of our products that can help them go and send out emails and set up webinars and all of that. It's all packaged up with the instructions right there. We make that available to our partners.
Yeah, I think the speakers obviously are a really important one, because you want that expertise from the vendor side, and it adds credibility. And of course, but I also think as you go through this, we've got things behind the scenes like a marketing hub where we're housing different campaigns and different elements that they can leverage for those types of events. Naturally, we also engage from a selling perspective, whether it's the configurator side I mentioned, or we've got this hero service where we'll either help fix things over the phone, or we'll send one individual out to that customer to make sure that things are running, and it's all considerate of the environment we're in, and precautions are taken and so on to make sure it goes well. So I think there's a host of developments that we've all had to make to try and make sure that the partner community, their value is protected and leveraged, quite frankly.
Michael,
Yeah,
do you want to
we have a data, we have a Market Now platform, which is powered by MindMatrix. It's a marketing platform free to all of our partners. That way they could upload lead lists. You get to track, you could link it to your social media, all of those different types of things. All the co-brandable materials are in there. We now have a bunch of COVID-19 specific campaigns, similar to what Scott was saying, campaign in a box. We offer the speakers, but I also think that the analytics, the chances are we've done just about every type of event, and I got analytics on it. So if you want to call me and my team, we can go back and you've got some obscure idea, and I can say, actually, you know what, we tried that and it worked, or we attended an event like this and it worked. So a lot of it, the best thing you could do is jump on a call with somebody, who does these events all the time, so that you're not wasting your time or your money on an event that we've got data that says it doesn't work.
Okay, and I've got a number of really specific questions. I think people are after some really specific answers. What are you seeing resonate with customers in email campaigns?
I just say that the same thing. It is, if you deliver you either deliver value or you don't deliver value in an email campaign. Boy, I delete my 10 emails per day because I'm the CMO and I'm one of the richest targets on all the agencies and everybody out there. If you can get to me with something of value, I'll at least click and watch. Most of the email campaigns are still selling at me and talking at me, and it just doesn't work. So any messaging across any channel, you need to demonstrate value really quickly.
I always tell my
some examples of that, Scott.
Yeah, for us, like for example, we made all these tips for working remotely, how to manage somebody remotely, 12 tips for working remotely, the tools that you need to have for remote working, how to look good on, one of our best ones was how to look good on video meetings, and because people just hadn't done it before, and we have, and we take it for granted, we do it all the time. Setting up proper lighting and making sure that you're looking directly in the camera, all of those types of things. We moved away from, hey, we're the business phone system, take a look at our phones, to here's this information that's of value to you. They read it and then they want to know more, and then they'll go into the messaging, and if it's a value to them on the tools, then they'll call our SDRs and we'll have a good conversation with them.
Fabulous. Eric, you were going to jump in.
Yeah, I would say.
Go ahead, Mike.
Go ahead. You want to go first, Eric?
No, go ahead.
I would say in terms of the content, what I've seen be successful is to take the time to make it industry specific. So if you're going to set up some campaigns, you specifically target a specific industry. And also, if you could partner with any sort of networking group, even like Chamber of Commerce, things like that, which I know they're typically like a business card exchange for the most part. Now they're starving for content and they're more apt to click on an email. So if you could partner with somebody like that, to Scott's point, what's funny to me, and maybe it's just human nature, people like lists. People click on lists, top 10 this, top 10 that. You tend to digest information better. I don't, you know, so break down an email like that, bullets. People will see that and they'll tend to read it. I don't know what the psychology is behind it, but I know that it works. I'm sure Scott and maybe Eric, you've got those things, or
yeah, and I think also, you know, Michael, on that note, if it's customized to me, you know, I've seen some data analytics pulled into some email that really shows that there's a little bit of homework, even if they automated the homework, done around me and my social profile. But I always say that I think email campaigns, I tell my kids, a sale is made better the better the communication is around it. So if I'm face to face, I'm gonna have more success than if I'm on the phone. And if I'm on the phone, I have more success than if I'm in email, right? And so naturally we have to use all of these vehicles, but I've never in my career seen a high success rate on my email campaigns, but they do the job of getting information out. They're great follow-up tools as well. Once I've got the door open, then somebody's expecting to see something from me. It's not foreign. But if you're going to go cold call with an email list, then I think the guys are on the money, either lists or customizing it to that user and something useful to them. But I think Scott nailed it when he said most of it's selling at me and talking at me. And 9 out of the 10 that I see every day, because I do click on them. I don't just delete the, and by the way, the open rate typically is really small in these things. And I'm opening most of mine and going garbage, 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 right? So, you know, it's not a high hit.
One tip I would suggest is open some of those things and take a look at the ones that you liked, and then steal the idea. I used to tell sales guys to do it. Listen to the sales pitch and steal it. So open them, say, hey, this is I almost want to click on this. Then use that, you know.
And something Eric said is actually really important. So if somebody has done homework and they can demonstrate that they've researched me, hey, we saw that you did this on social media, we can help you do more of that. I realize, I go, what did I do on social media? And you know, that gives you just a little bit of a head start against all the others, just right there.
Yeah, you caught my attention, right?
Excellent. And we're getting a lot of quite specific questions on the marketing front. And I've got another one here. And the question is, a lot of our leads are coming through referrals. Have you got any advice on how we can create even more referrals than we're getting today?
Depends on the referral. So for us, we have a referral bounty program within the company, most definitely. And then also we have a big social media play. And so in social media is you can activate your community, again, and I keep saying this, with information of value to that community. They're going to tell friends who tell friends who come to you. So, you know, we talked about email, which is this dying art, I guess, over time. We talked about how little you click, but if you can engage with communities and they can talk and they can refer, that's where you're going to get your highest opportunity leads, because it comes through a trusted source or a method of validation or something like that. So we focus on the analyst community, we focus on our customers, we focus on our partners. In fact, we just launched a customer program called Intermedia Business Innovators, where we heard so many great stories from our end customers that we asked them to tell those stories so that we can share them with other customers. And that's pulling in a number of leads because prospects are hearing other, you know, real people who've used the products and services tell the stories in their own words, and they're coming to us in that way. Referrals are very important. You know, we could spend a whole webinar on that, but activating your communities and getting them to talk is way more important than hitting everybody with a bunch of emails and buying lists.
Yeah, you know, I think referrals are extremely powerful. Matter of fact, my 16-year-old son started a business recently, and I think about all of his marketing is through referral based, and he's getting a lot of social media from what he does. He captures it and puts it out, and his customers are happy they saw themselves out there, and then that propagates. And of course, his is a localized, business. But the point is that referrals are powerful, especially if you can bring as much of the experience that they're having forward to the people who are being, referred, right? And I think you can scale a referral, like vendors like us, depending on what we're doing with it, whether it's through our social media avenues or even writing a white paper together that talks about it. You definitely want to take that credibility from the referral as far as you can. And like I said, as much of that experience that translates over, think about going to a nice restaurant and people take pictures of it instead of just writing about it, right? You feel like now you are a part of it and you want to go there and experience that. And so the more you can improve their familiarity with it, so when you get your referrals, get as much out of them as you can, find ways to capture it, not just in text, but in video or in other ways. Use social media to propagate that, work with your vendors to build, whether it's white papers or just propagating it through their own social media and other ways.
Excellent.
I think this was the best question that came up, the referral side. We talked to a bunch of partners, we did a survey, 67% of partners said that's their number one way they bring somebody on. So when you talk about how you get them, we said up front, I used to sell insurance. This is 20 years ago, where you had to knock on doors and call people at dinner time, and you would have to slide a piece of paper and say, give me 3 referrals, and nobody wants to do that. But there are creative ways to ask for referrals. You can go in, you could do some LinkedIn mining and figure out that one of your good customers is connected with this attorney that you're trying to get a hold of. You go into your QBR with them and you say, hey, I'm trying to get my foot in the door with Jim down the street. They're connected. Oh, I play golf with them all the time. Now that's a softer way. Another way that I'm just kind of having some conversations about, we have an advisory board at Datto. There's no reason why you can't have an advisory board of your people. People like to feel important. You would love to be, hey, I'm putting together a 10-person advisory board. Love to be a part of it. We're going to meet quarterly. Those people are now going to be clients for life, but they're going to now start referring business. Hey, this is one of the parts of, one of the perks of this is, you got to help me out. So try something like that. That has worked. There's no reason why you can't have your own small personal advisory board for your company with your good clients.
Okay.
This advisory board notion that Michael talked about is super important. So I forgot to bring that up earlier, but having advisory boards, having roundtables is really important right now, because it brings your customers in, and not only can you learn from them and what's important to them right now and how you can message to them, engage with them, and what you need to do to support them, but also when they feel part of the discussion, when they feel empowered that they're being heard and they're having input, they become advocates for your business, and that's as powerful as it gets.
Yeah, it's a great point. Building a referral comes from partnering early, for sure.
Yeah.
And another really cool question, which is, you all deal with lots of partners. Have you got examples of really cool marketing things that your partners are doing at the moment? So any examples that spring to mind?
Well, this is a tactic. We all of a sudden were asked to provide all of these roll-up posters that sit behind. And in fact, I should have one, but I had to shift rooms here. But that sit behind partners. All of a sudden, they're doing all video conferencing, and they told us, we want you to ship us these things that have the name of the product, our name, all this kind of stuff. We've been shipping those all over the place, and so now as we get videos of them, they've got that behind them. The other piece, and we'll go back to this, is this webinar. You saw in the polls that the people who are tuned into this webinar are looking for answers, are looking for help, and the partners we're seeing rise to the top, they're figuring out how to go out and help their end customers, and they're delivering a lot of webinars to be able to do that and to be able to have engagements in person to understand what they're all about and provide advice.
Yeah, I think
one of the cool things, I'm trying to think of it outside of the box things. We had a partner come to us for $1,000 to do a co-branded Purell mailer. And he's going to buy 1,000 of these things. They were $2,300. We're going to split the cost. And I brought that up. I have a panel with my CRO and CMO, and my CMO thought it was the dumbest idea. Direct mailers are worthless. Don't do it. This and that. We fought. It was like 2 weeks to get this guy's $1,000. Finally, he just caved and said, all right, shut up, Mike. We'll give you the $1,000. And we're seeing ROI on it already. He sent out Purell about us, a data on his company name, and he's already brought on new clients. So that was, I just want to fight for it so I could see the stats, but it works. So outside of the box, you want a specific example? That's the one I could think of.
Well, it's funny. I think two things. So Mike, on that one, I think, what's been done before, it doesn't mean it can't be done again. And oftentimes what's tried and true continues to work. And sometimes just going back to those things makes a difference. But I think the one thing that I've seen that stands out is you have better access to experts now than you ever did. When they had to be physical visits, getting people to go places was always hard, or they had to compete with schedules, or maybe they weren't sure. But now with everything being video, I've found that partners are doing a good job of getting the right people at both the end customer and at the vendor and on their side on. And we might have multiple calls a day to work through an issue with all the right people. And I think that's one of the pluses about this selling cycle, is that we're able to address things in a much faster, more efficient way with really smart folks on the phone, which for me is huge.
Excellent. We're almost out of time, and we have got a couple of questions that we haven't been able to get to, but I'd like to finish by asking each of you, if you had one piece of sales advice and one piece of marketing advice for people on the call today, what would those pieces of advice be? Michael, maybe I can start with you.
Yeah, on the sales side of things, the most important thing to be doing right now is focusing on those referrals and recommendations, and spend more time on that, because you're going to have a higher success rate. It doesn't mean that's your only sales tactic, right? It becomes a funnel, but if you could find out a repeatable way to get referrals from your existing clients, it's going to speed up your roadmap and hopefully start to close that gap in that first poll that you showed. On the marketing side, again, I think that the webinar is educational, make it customizable. There's a lot of information you can gather about a business or a particular person. Just open on social media, do a little bit more homework up front, so that now that email becomes more customizable if you're sending that, or that phone call, you know where to start. So sales side, figure out a way to grow that referral base, and on the marketing side, make sure that it's targeted and educational.
Eric, same question to you.
Sure, I appreciate that. I think I'd add a couple. So I like Michael's point about referrals, and I'd tie onto that with the account mapping piece I talked about earlier. So use that referral and then go do mapping with your vendors to make sure that you guys are targeting the right customer bases and using those referrals to put them to work. And then I think on the marketing side, my advice would be that you should come up with your digital sales kit for your people. What are the components that they should be talking about, and then make sure all of that's refreshed. Whether it's stuff from your vendors or stuff that you've published in-house. Oftentimes we put something out and then we kind of forget about it. It's on a store somewhere, what have you. And today we can make it more relevant than ever. And by the way, it's so much more important than ever that it's relevant. So I would revisit all of those and make sure that that toolkit is understood by your sales folks. Hey, here's the 7 plays. Here's how each one of them works. Here's the collateral that supports them. Just make sure your team's armed with all of that and you're getting a good closed loop feedback on it.
And my two, number one from a marketing perspective is know what your customers care about right now. So when the virus hit, what they cared about yesterday went out the window and everything changed. So we had to change and test all of our messaging, all remote work. And now as things loosen up, somebody asked earlier on, what's next? That's the question on everybody's mind. So every day something's a little bit different. Make sure you're staying in tune with what your customers care about. And then from a sales and marketing perspective is don't underestimate the value of humanity. So video conferencing, because we're all sitting alone, is better than an email, is better than a voice on the phone. And I'll get on these video conferences where everybody calls in and I'll pop up, and pretty soon all of a sudden somebody begrudgingly will pop up, and then somebody pops up elsewhere, and then you're looking at each other in the eyes. And when that visual connection gets lost, there's a lot of power to it, and you can make it happen, but nobody's going to volunteer to show up on a video screen. But you got to make that connection, whether you're selling or marketing or running a round table or whatever.
Fabulous. Michael, Eric, Scott, thank you so much for some great advice, great input, great answers to the questions. As I say, there's still a couple that need answering, so our panelists have committed to answering those, so we can post them up on the website tomorrow. So, gentlemen, thank you very, very much indeed. For everyone on the call, you'll be faced with a survey as you leave the call. If you complete the survey, you'll be entered into a draw for a $100 Amazon gift card. So do spend just that extra few seconds completing the survey. But Michael, Eric, Scott, thank you very, very much indeed. Really, really good job, guys.
Thank you.